This is one of the most distorted drops I have ever heard, but in a professional and fun way. Let's get to Valentino Khan's and nitty-gritty this project, Your Body.
Everybody
Work it.
Today is all about layering and distortions. Let's get to the first section of this tutorial and see what's going on. This bass is super distorted. Most heavy distortions are achieved with the help of the great Trash 2 by iZotope Company. Let's take a listen to the solo of the basses. Guys, there's this simple mindset when you are designing sounds or when you want to recreate a patch yourself. It is that when we go to the lower frequencies, the sounds are simpler, and when we are in the higher frequencies from high mids to the high end of the spectrum, the sounds can become more complex and we can have different characters on those parts of the frequencies. For example, here we have the sub in the bass group. This is a very simple sub that we have in 90% of the sounds. Next, we have the low mid layer of the bass. And this layer is very simple again. This is a sub-wave and a very simple low mid sound. But with a little bit more distortion for this special sound. But next, in our high mids and higher end, we have very distorted sounds to make this powerful distorted bass. Very harsh. This is very distorted to an extent that you can't hear the notes changing. This is like we are playing just one note. And for this layer, this one is very distorted too, and you can't hear the notes changing. Now let's get to the first layer. For this layer, because I wanted to make it a very distorted layer, I used this oscillator instead of the simple oscillator. This one is here in analog section, the first one. And as you can see, this is a very complex wavetable. And this helped me to achieve this very distorted sound. And I have added some noise in the noise oscillator. And there is nothing going on here. Just in the FX section, as always, I have added some OTT here with the gain at 10 dB. And I have turned on the multiband. Here I have added diode number 2. This is a very heavy distortion. Drive to the max, mix to the max. Let's turn this 2 off. You see, a huge difference is made by these two effects. Next, I have added this filter, MG Low 18. I turn this off. This is a very harsh sound, but I have controlled it a little bit with this filter. And there is nothing, and this EQ is doing nothing. And here in the FX section, I have added some overdrive, because here in Valentino Khan drop, we are going to achieve heavy distortions. So I have added the first layer of distortion right here. I turn this off. More power to this sound, and I wanted to just fill the high-end part of the spectrum and frequencies. So I added this huge high pass right here. After that, I have added frequency shifter. The sound that I was making was very bright, and I wanted to make it darker for this bass house drop. I turn this frequency shifter off. A very bad sound, a very bright sound, and we don't want it. So I turn this on. Now this is suitable for a bass house drop. After that, I rolled off the high end because we had a lot of harsh frequencies here. Now the sound is smoother, and here the great Trash 2. This is one of my favorite plugins, and I have used the multiband here, and in the top end I have added the crunchy taco, if I'm pronouncing it right, and this is a very heavy distortions. And as you can see, I have decreased the gain a lot for this band here, and the mix is around 33%. This is a parallel distortion. This is off. This is up. You see, the sound becomes alive and powerful. Of course, this is a subtle difference, but in the whole mix down, it makes a big and huge difference at the end. For the next layer, I wanted to fill out this part of the spectrum in the high mids, and this is very simple. I have used two subwaves, and this is -3 octave, this is -2 octave, and the fine tunes are at -27. And here I wanted to fill a little bit more space in the spectrum, so I added 2 octaves, -3 and -2. And there is nothing going on here. I have turned on the mono button, and I have added a little bit of portamento to connect the notes together. And here in the FX section, as the last sound, we have OTT, we have delay number 2, a lot of distortion. We have the filter and the EQ that we didn't need it. So let's turn this off. We don't need this. And here I have added the overdrive, but here because we are in the high mids, I wanted a more controlled sound. So I added this OTT. When I turn this on, the frequency bands are even and much more controlled. After that, this EQ, and I added this notch right here because you see, this is more melodic and more musical when you increase this frequency for this particular sound. Next, we have the iZotope Trash 2 again. Let's turn this off first. Pay close attention to the changes that this Trash 2 is making to the sound. This is the distortion that we want. And here, because we are working in this particular area, I have added the multiband and I have used the dense preset. The shape is like this. It is a little bit less intense than the high-end layer. I decrease a little bit of the gain and the mix is around here. A very beautiful distortion. Next is EQ. I remove this frequency. It was very annoying. Let's turn this off. Very bad. But when it is on, a nice one, and a high pass at the end. Next layer is our mid-frequency layer. It is feeling around the 120 Hz above to, I think, 500. Let's take a listen. This is making a sound very heavy. And here I have used the same oscillator, the 4088. The fine tune is at -27. The same setting, mono button on, a little bit of portamento. In the FX section, OTT, diode number 2, less distortion because this is our mid layer and I wanted to make it cleaner. And I added this flanger because I wanted to add a little bit of movement to the sound in this part of the frequency spectrum. And at the end, I added this MG Low 18 again to remove the unwanted frequencies. And here, a little bit of EQ, not very much of a difference. And here, this is very important. This is the next saturation and distortion weapon that I use a lot beside Trash 2. I turn this off. I have added a lot of clean tube saturation to this area of the sound that we are working on. Let's turn this off. Very beautiful. And after that, I have monoed the sound. And guys, there is one very simple trick that I wanted to tell you. Here in the synth bus that we have all the basses together, I have this kick start at 61%. This is a subtle sidechain for all the basses. But as we are going down lower in the frequency spectrum, these are our high-end layers. This is our mid-frequency layer. Here I have added the kick start again just for this part of the frequencies. And I have increased the sidechain to 80% because I wanted more sidechain for the lower frequencies. And here in the sub section, I have added the kick start again and I have increased it to 100% because I wanted to duck the sub completely to -infinite when the kick plays. And this is a very good trick to have a very natural sidechain, and it is less sidechain in the higher frequencies, and as we go down to lower frequencies, we have a lot more sidechains. And guys, in the sub layer, as always, I have used the analog B design that I use in all of my tutorials. Very simple. And I have added R-based stereo here to add high harmonics to our sub and make it more powerful in the frequency of 83 Hz. And I have added Submarine to add sub harmonics to our sub and make it more powerful. And I added the rumble that my sub needed in this drop. Next, we have the sidechain at 100%. I have cut off the high frequencies and nothing else. And there's this interesting layer here. This is filling our mid frequencies. This is a noise which is mono, and I felt that this part of the frequency was very empty. So I added this white noise to fill it and make it as busy as I want it. If you have found this video useful so far, please consider liking and subscribing. And of course, this gives me a lot of motivation to make more of this stuff. And also hit the notification bell for all the future updates and projects. Thank you, friends. These drum samples are very carefully selected to add the desired groove to this drop, but their arrangement is very simple. Let's take a listen to the solo of the drum group. Here we have a very fat kick. Nice. A dirty clap. Very compressed and very distorted. And here there is this nice little hi-hat. And we have these percussions like the Julian Jordan tutorial. These percussions are playing along with the main bass. And in Julian Jordan, the percussions were playing along with the main synths. This adds a very powerful and beautiful groove to your songs. Let's take a listen to the solo of these percussions first. Yeah, these are playing the same except for the last one here. This goes down a few semitones down. Let's take a listen again. Now with all the drums. Now I turn the main bass and pay close attention to the relationship between the percussions and the main bass here. Nice. I turn this percussion off and now let's take a listen again. In my opinion, the groove falls apart. You want this professional percussions, you want these short percussions absolutely in your groove.
Everybody work it.
Very nice. And guys, here very simply in the vocal group, we have two kind of vocals. This is a normal vocal. Let's take a listen. And this one has lower formant than this one. And here we have a very simple brief sample with the drums.
Everybody work it.
And that's it guys for this drop. Thanks for watching friends. If you have any questions about the tips that we talked about today, just ask me in the comments and I love you so much. Bye.
Work it. Everybody work it.